The MCAT Cars Podcast, session number 30. The Cars section of the MCAT gives thousands of pre-meds nightmares every night. Whether you're an ESL student, lack confidence while reading, or a slow reader like me, Jack Weston and the medical school headquarters are here to help you score higher in every section so you can be confident you're ready to get the MCAT score of your dreams. Welcome to the MCAT Cars Podcast, where we talk cars all day and all night. No, not Buicks and Chevys and Mercedes. We talk about the cars section of the MCAT. As always, I'm joined by Jack Weston from jackweston.com. He is the best cars tutor out there, and he has a cars course for you if you are struggling with the cars section. If you text the word MCAT Cars, all one word, MCAT Cars to 44222, you will immediately be given a link to Jack Weston's website that will automatically activate a coupon for $100 off of his course. That is an affiliate link. I do get a small commission when you use that link. You save, I get a small commission, and you get free MCAT prep, MCAT Cars prep here on the MCAT Cars Podcast. Let's go ahead and jump into our passage today with Jack. Jack Weston back for some more MCAT Cars Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, Ryan. How's it going? How are you?
I'm good. I don't have any new podcasts to add to the 500,000 from last week, but maybe soon. I got some new podcasts cooking.
I thought you had 2 million by now.
Nope, still only 7, but literally I do have some more podcasts cooking. So awesome. more are coming, unfortunately for me. All right. So I was excited about last week's podcast. Hopefully I'll be just as excited about this week's, although, right, we've talked about it a bunch. We shouldn't really be excited. It just is what it is, right? Just read it and try to understand it.
I mean, you can be excited. Just be excited about everything you read.
Everything.
Everything, yeah. Right? And this is why we're doing this passage today, because the last one was something that I think was something that you maybe, you find a lot of interest in, and whoever's listening to this podcast probably finds interest in podcasts, right? So there was an article about podcasts. So you probably, were having a good time reading that passage, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one,
dun, dun, dun.
not so much, right? I mean, it's probably something that you're not necessarily related to or associated with. And I had a student this past week talk to me about religion articles and how they, he did one of my daily passages on religion, and how he just totally bombed it, right? And he didn't feel good about those passages. So he asked me, what should I do? What should he do if you have trouble with certain types of passages? Because he should try to find interest in everything he reads, right? That's what I always preach.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this case, I think it's good to tackle your weakness. So if you find that you're weak in a certain topic or a certain domain, read more on those domains, because what's happening is it's not necessarily your interest is low. It's that you're not familiar with the topic, and that causes you to kind of shut down that part of your brain that wants to learn about it because you're under pressure. So if you read up on religion, not necessarily knowing outside information about religion, but just getting used to the style of writing, getting used to the way they present religion, because the way they present religion articles versus philosophy articles versus history is completely different.
Yeah.
So noticing what they like to do, how they like to do it, gives you an idea, and it'll give you some more comfort when you actually take it, the real test, and see it on the real exam.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly what popped into my mind, and I was going to talk about it if you didn't, was the different topics are potentially written about differently, different styles, just like you mentioned. And if we're not used to reading that, it hurts our brain. And we're like, I don't like this topic. Well, no, you might like this topic. You just have to stretch yourself and work to understand it a little bit more.
That's it. Stretch, right? And that's why you practice. You practice. Eventually, you don't have to stretch. It's all there. You know what to do. You know what to look out for. And, you have to have some discomfort to improve.
Yeah.
You have to have some struggles in order to learn and improve on. So that's MCAT for you, right? It really tests your character. Are you willing to, really go through a hard time for 3-4 months? And that's what they want to see. They don't care about your score. They just want to see that you you actually like put in the effort and you actually prepared. Because
if that's all they care about, I'm going to take it 7 times. They'll see that I really care.
Yeah, that actually works. I know a lot. I mean, I think you can attest to this. I think they love students who are persistent, that work hard, that don't give up, right? So you either show you don't give up by taking it once or twice and doing really well, or taking it 7 times. Unfortunately, hopefully that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah.
But it shows persistence. Don't give up. You'll get in.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Now I'm scared about reading this one, but I do want to, we were talking about stretching and comfort zone and stuff. There's an awesome image. If you Google it, there's a circle. It's a Venn diagram that isn't a Venn diagram. The circles don't connect. And the big circle says comfort zone, right? Your comfort zone. And then there's a circle off to the right that says where great things happen, right? And they don't connect. You have to get over there. You have to stretch yourself.
I love it. I love it.
That's an awesome one to maybe put on a phone lock screen or something. All right, let's get to our passage today. As always, you can follow along in the show notes. There's a link to the article there. Paragraph 1, there are 4 original manuscripts containing poetry in Old English, the now defunct language of the medieval Anglo-Saxons that have survived to the present day. All right, so we're set up here saying 4 manuscripts in Old English, which is a medieval Anglo-Saxons language that is defunct, that are still around today.
Yeah, I mean, again, you just have to
Very literal.
get yourself situated here. There's these 4 books, manuscripts, contain poetry.
Yep.
Defunct, meaning what? What does defunct really mean?
Extinct.
Just not around.
Yeah.
Right. So it's survived. And that gives you the big picture here, right? It's probably not around because it's surviving.
Yep.
So that's evidence for it not being around. Okay.
No more, no less. So just saying only those 4. There are no more, there are no less. They are the Versili book, which contains 6 poems, including the hallucinatory Dream of the Rude, the Junius manuscript, which comprises 4 long religious poems, the Exeter book, crammed with riddles and elegies, and the Beowulf manuscript, whose name says it all. Ooh, all right. So we're given the 4 different manuscripts, names and a brief little bit about what they're about.
That's it.
There is no way of knowing how many more poetic codices, the special term for these books, might have existed once upon a time, but have since been destroyed. So last paragraph is saying there may have been more, potentially. We don't know, but we only have the 4 now.
Yeah. Now, a lot of students usually are thinking, do I need to write these names down? Versili, Junius, Beowulf, Exeter. No. Just know that they're in this paragraph. We're talking about 4 books, 4 manuscripts, whatever you want to call them, and they're old. That's it. That's all you really need to know.
The other thing here that would throw me off potentially is the first 3. It gives a little bit about what they are, right? Hallucinatory, the 4 long religious poems, riddles, and elegies, and then Beowulf, whose name says it all. And somebody who might not know what that is like, well, I what do you mean the name says it all? I don't know. What
you don't need to know.
You don't need to know. Just move on.
You just move on. Yeah, I mean, Beowulf. I mean, it's great if you know it. Wolf is what? Is that a nice animal? Scary animal? Probably a scarier animal, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you can guess that, great. If you don't guess that, it's not the end of the world. You don't need to know the description of these books, right? As long as you know the books exist. And let's say they do ask a question about the description. Highly unlikely. I'm telling you, you've never seen it. That's not their goal. But you know where to go back in case you do.
Okay. All right. Paragraph 2. Until last week, I had seen 2 of these manuscripts in person and turned the pages of one. So the author is kind of highlighting that he or she has touched at least one of these books, or has touched one of them, and has seen 2 of them in person. Okay. But then I visited Anglo-Saxon Kingdoms, Art, Word, War, a new show of artifacts at the British Library in London. So the author is saying they visited this show that had artifacts in London. Okay. It's a vast exhibition covering the art, literature, and history of the people whose kingdoms spread across Britain between the 6th and 11th centuries. So just defining what this exhibit is. The impetus for the show came from the library's 2012 acquisition of the St. Cuthbert Gospel, the earliest intact European book, in the words of the show's catalog. So they're giving a specific example here of this earliest intact European book as to why this exhibit exists.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, they don't really describe the books, right? Beowulf is some kind of hero who fights some monster. That's what I always think about when I think of Beowulf, like the monster. But it's not important. It's not important at all. They don't really care about it. In this case, just knowing that the author has seen these two books and touched one, and now the author has seen them all along, with each other. I think that's all you really need to know.
Okay. Seeing the earliest European book alone would be the event of a lifetime for a certain kind of museum goer. And so just saying the book is awesome if that's your thing. But for this viewer, the main attraction lay in a quiet little vitrine, all four Old English poetic codices side by side. So this viewer, meaning the author, I'm assuming, and just saying that he or she was there for those four Old English books that were all there. They don't look that impressive to the casual eye, just kind of describing them. The exhibition room is dark and cold to keep the books safe from damage. So interesting. So kind of describing the room and why. The manuscripts are brown, small, almost self-effacing. So self-effacing is a word that I'm not familiar with. So I'd have to hope that it's not important.
Yeah, you don't need to know. It's like being humble, right? Humility to some degree. It's synonymous with humility. So brown, small, usually that gives it away, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not necessarily the most.
They're not gaudy and ornamental books.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I can picture that. There's no outward sign of how important they are. Oh, there you go. It defines it right there.
There you go. Yeah.
How unprecedented their meeting. So again, just defining kind of the why the author went to go see these books and kind of describing them.
Well, what is the point? What is the author find even more compelling than the actual book itself?
I don't know. Are you talking about the book itself? Like just that they're, again, just how small they are, brown, self-effacing, or just that they're all together?
All together, right? All four Old English poetic codices side by side.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the key here. Not the fact that they're, just there, but they're there together. Right. That's the important part. That's the thing that the author thinks is monumental. It's, unprecedented and never been done before. Right. Yeah. Essentially.
Okay. Paragraph 4. So why are these four books so special? That is the question. It has to do, I think, with the concept of the original, a concept we have almost entirely lost touch with. So the author's trying to potentially explain why they're special, and he says, or she says, the concept of the original. And that would confuse me, but my assumption is that the author is going to go into it, so I would just keep reading.
Something about its originality, right? Maybe it's the first of its kind. Maybe, something like that. Okay.
The Beowulf manuscript is not just composed of words that serve as the basis for every translation of the epic poem. So the author is saying that at least the Beowulf manuscript is not just the words, right? There's potentially more to it. It's foremost an object, the only one of its kind. Okay, so the author, it's interesting. He's saying it's an object. Okay, like what's special about an object? He hasn't.
It says only one of its kind.
Yeah.
So it's unique. It's original, and to some degree.
Okay. More than just a book. It's one of a kind.
Right.
Okay. It is not merely a representation of a story. It is the story. Interesting. So the author is trying to explain that the Beowulf story isn't the story. It's the fact that this book has survived potentially. Like that is the story, that we have this book.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. In this respect, the manuscript resembles the crown jewels more than any document written in today's world. Any word that moves through the crazy fractal of the internet. So yeah, so now I'm seeing that the author is more in awe of how this thing has survived, how these 4 things have survived, more than just the story that it tells. The fact that this book has survived for so long is the important thing.
Great.
Okay. The manuscripts confront us with a former version of our literary selves, identities that we barely recognize and which estrange us from ourselves. Okay, so the last sentence is confusing, but I think he's just saying, look, these books are written by people from a long time ago, people we barely recognize.
Yeah, maybe. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. So the fact that they're so old, that they're original, right? Not necessarily what's in the books, but the fact that they're the first of their kind, or maybe the only of their kind, right? That's the point the author is trying to get at.
Yeah.
Right. So these books are important because of their originality.
Okay. Paragraph 5. Each of the poetic codices has a specific history engraved into the text's physical form. All right. So I think potentially now he's talking about the story itself, right? Specific history engraved into the text's physical form. The very space they occupy on Earth is meaningful. Now, again, he's talking about the book and not necessarily the words, maybe. The Vercelli book is named for Vercelli, a town in northern Italy, whose cathedral library holds the manuscript. So the book, named for a book, where it's held. Nobody knows for sure how the book got there, although the prevailing theory is that a pilgrim left it behind or gave it away on his travels. Just kind of explaining its history. Who, why, when, unknown. So I think it's interesting. So the author seems to be kind of in awe of the history of these books and kind of their story. Again, more than the actual story inside the books.
That's it. That's the main idea. That's the picture that you need to know. Right. The books itself, what they contain, isn't that important, but the process of it existing, right? The fact that it exists is the importance here, the originality of it.
Yeah. I think this is a really good passage article here to, again, kind of stretch yourself, right? The writing was a little bit tougher than just talking about podcasts and the Joe Rogan experience. But also it can get a little confusing, I think, even for me, if I'm reading this quickly. I'm like, wait a minute, is he talking about how awesome the story is versus the book itself? And so really just being able to again, slow down just a tiny bit so that you can really understand and understand that an author may be talking about something differently than how you may be thinking he or she is talking about it. And just,
I think
being aware that can happen, I think, is gold in of itself.
That's you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, basically what they're going to do is bring up something that you may be familiar with, right? Books, but they're going to bring it up in a way that you've never thought about.
Yeah.
Right. And the key is, are you going to catch that bigger point? right? That they care about that unique point or perspective from the author.
Mm-hmm.
So, all it takes is that stretch. Are you willing to not give up? Because what happens for most students is when times get tough, right? When it gets tough, they give up. They start guessing, right? And they're just skimming. They're not really paying attention. So this is a matter of how focused can you be? Can you really focus on reading carefully and not giving up and not worrying about every little detail that you read?
Yeah.
Just moving forward and puzzling it together, right? But not necessarily a big puzzle, but just keep reading until they clear it up.
I can easily see a question focusing on an answer that talks about the author loving Beowulf as a story one of its kind, because in the one sentence or two sentences back to back, it talks about the Beowulf manuscript and saying how it's one of a kind. But again, if you didn't catch that it's talking about the book, right? The object and not the story, that'd be hard to catch.
Yeah, exactly. A really tricky answer choice would be the story in the book was one of a kind, right? It's not that. It's the book itself that was one of a kind, right? So that would be beyond the scope of the passage. So yeah, great.
All right, so there you have it. Lots of old books. Actually, not lots, only 4. Interesting passage about some old books and using our skills that Jack is teaching us to break down the sentences, break down the paragraphs, and really try to understand what the author is telling us. I don't know about you, but my general default is I'm going to, after every sentence I read, every word I read, every paragraph I read, I'm going to start interpreting what I think is going on. And that's just not the way to go. And so hopefully with what we are teaching you here today, you will do the right thing and have a great score on your car section and the MCAT as a whole. I hope you have a great week. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get our podcast free every week right in your podcast app of choice, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. You can find us everywhere. We'll see you next time.